Hello and welcome. This is Women Gone Vibrant. And I have on the other line, Kate O'Donnell, major honoring guest. Kate, who has written 2 books on Ayurveda. Well, actually 2 cookbooks on Ayurveda. The Everyday Ayurveda cookbook that I have in my hand right now. And then you also, well, actually 2 books, one on the sattvic eating and one on just everyday cooking, simple recipes. So super happy you decided to be on my podcast to tell us more about food and the mind and Ayurveda and how that all interacts. So welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So just a few words about you, Kate. You're a lecturer, you're a yoga teacher, you're way into Ashtanga yoga, and you do Ayurvedic consultations, and you're way into this healing world. And we were chatting a little bit before, right? I feel like I know you, but I don't know you at all because it seems like you've done so many of the similar things that I have done. You go to India frequently and you're way into cooking and way into food and healing yourself with natural methods. And I'm just really curious about what brought you to writing cookbooks? Like what drew you to that particular activity, so to speak?
Yeah. I'm not a chef. I'm not even remotely a chef. I mean, I play around in the kitchen a lot, just making whatever. I'm not fancy. But it was when I started practicing Ayurveda, I was living in Boston, and I realized that no one was cooking. Like a lot of my clients ate out all the time. And one of the first things I learned from my Ayurvedic doctor in Mysore was not to eat outside food. And it's very difficult to maintain a certain level of purity and intentionality in the food when you're at a restaurant all the time. So I just realized that people were quite disconnected from the idea of food, and a lot of people saw it as kind of like a pain in the butt as opposed to a healing modality. And that is why I wrote the cookbook, because I would, as a practitioner, we're looking at the qualities that a person might be deficient in or have too many of. Like, for instance, someone's too heavy, right? So they feel heavy in the mind or they feel heavy in the body. So we want to introduce some light qualities. So I'd say, oh yeah, we need to get some kind of bitter green vegetables into this person. And my husband used to joke, like, I'd have a consult and he'd be like, what'd you tell him? Eat more kale?
Right?
Yeah. So a lot of the time it is something like that. There might be a very specific vegetable, like, broccoli, or, it's often kale. I pick kale a lot because everybody's heard of kale right now. It gets a lot of good press, so I'm going for success with the client where I'm like, all right, how about kale? And they're like, yeah, I know it's good for me. I don't really know what to do with it. And it was like over and over again. How about celery? Oh, I know it's a diuretic. It's good for me. I don't know what to do. Yeah, I like to just eat it, So I started making these recipes that I would send to the client. And I just started kind of having these little files on my computer for like celery recipe, kale recipe, pomegranate recipe, and I would familiarize myself with the local stores and where you could get what, and so that I could sort of furnish the client with all the information that they needed, and a recipe that was so simple. And my recipes were like narratives. So I was trying to teach them how to cook as well. Like, while the water's boiling, get the kale out of the refrigerator, strip the leaves off, so there was this play-by-play going on, because what I really realized is that it was an unfamiliar activity to a lot of people, like the yoga of food. It's like, you don't just tell somebody, do a sun salutation if they've never done it before. You have to really break down the whole process. So it wasn't necessarily that I'm like a foodie that I wrote cookbooks. That was what was needed over and over again. I was like, I can't get anywhere with these people if they don't know what to do with the foods I want them to intake. Because that's Ayurveda, right? With food is the substance. It's the number one substance that we use to affect changes on the body. So
I need to interrupt you here for a second, because what you were saying about I'm not a foodie, I'm not a chef. And you know what? Now that you say that, it totally comes through in your books. There's such simplicity in your books. And that's what I really appreciate about them. And the other thing is like, I just touch them and I can feel you in these books. Like I open them, they're super good quality. They're amazing pictures. It's vibrating the energy of I nourish myself, I feed myself.
That's so nice. Thank you.
And that's why
and that was a process.
Was it a process? Yeah.
You know, to create that, like I felt the book in my consciousness and then had to bring it into the world. And the photographer, Kara Brosner, she helped. Our designer, Allison, helped. And the publisher was really, Shambhala was really great. I'm so glad I worked with them. And it was like this team effort of getting on board where I would sort of like paint a picture of the Ayurvedic lifestyle. And everybody involved in the book knew me well and also was living an Ayurvedic lifestyle. So it's like the photographer, the designer, the publisher, everybody was into Ayurveda. So it's like oozing out of the book on all levels.
It totally is, and I have it on my shelf. And you know, I'm not even a person who likes to follow recipes at all. Every so often I pick it up and I just want to look at the pictures and get some inspiration. And just leafing through it, I'm like, oh, this is a good idea, and I could just add that, you know. And it's really inspiring to me to look at your books. So hey, your first book, the Everyday Ayurveda Cookbook, it's organized according to the seasons. And I'm really curious why you chose that. I mean, it's really clear to me, but it may not be clear to other people why you chose to organize that with the seasons. I find that super helpful.
Yeah, that was the book I wanted to create right off the bat. I knew I didn't want to. Any of your listeners who have picked up Ayurvedic cookbooks in the past, they might have seen that they were organized according to the doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, which if you don't know anything about what that is, it's very difficult to use the books. So I found that a lot of people would come to me and I'd say, oh, you know, do you cook? And they'd be like, I have an Ayurvedic cookbook, but like, I don't really get it. So I never use it. And I heard it so many times. I was like, all right, like we're making a new book, you know? And there is in the ancient information, there is a very high regard of the seasons and how they affect our health. So as I was talking about the quality, heavy and light before, you know, some seasons are heavy and some seasons are light. Like the springtime when it's all like wet and damp and cool, it's like, oh, you know, you just like, you can feel the brain fog just kind of like thinking about like the heavy, wet, cold spring. So during that time, if we increase the light foods in the body and spices that kind of increase the fire a little bit, it like helps us get through the environmental effects of that season. And the effects that the environment is having on us is actually considered one of the few main causes of disease in the Ayurvedic texts. So I thought, if this is so important in the texts, we should talk about the seasons, you know? We should talk about that and get people like, because you can really understand that. If you go through, you use the book over the course of a year, you go through the different seasons. And I talk in the book as well about sort of how to adjust the qualities based on where you actually live. Because it's written to sort of the quintessential like winter, fall, spring, summer. But wherever people are, they are experiencing shifting qualities. So I talk about the qualities all the time, and that's really what the book is about, is these qualities that we use as the effective means of changing what's going on in our bodies. So if you understand, like, well, Phoenix is dry and hot. Kate's writing about like cooking apple crisp right now, you know, but it's dry and hot in Phoenix. So I do need to make sure I add more oils to things and to watch those foods that Kate says are going to increase the heat in the body. And that will just make it easier for me to get through the part of the year in Phoenix that's actually even more hot and more dry than the other parts of the year, right? So everybody has seasons. And when we manage the qualities as they're coming at us on a seasonal basis, we are less likely to get sick. It's like you're rowing your boat like along with the flow of nature instead of against it. And that in that way you have all this extra energy. Your body has all this extra immunity that it's not like spending on going backwards trying to eat papaya in the dead of winter.
Yeah.
Seems like obvious, but
right, but it's not, and it's really it's one of the relatively simple ways to get ourselves back into balance, just paying attention to the seasons and eating according to the seasons. So we don't even have to know what's going on in our bodies yet. The first step being just, hey, first step, just eat whole foods. Second step, eat seasonally, you know, and then after that we can get more refined and more refined and more refined, like that.
Totally agreed. And that's, again, I wanted the book to hit people that way. So it's got this 50 pages of like introduction to Ayurveda, but I was very clear with the reader that you don't actually have to read this for this to work. Like you don't have to know and understand. You just follow along, you know, in the book.
Just cook for yourself and go into the kitchen, make these simple recipes. And and the other thing I really love about this is that whenever I open up a page, there's not like a huge long list of ingredients. It's usually just like, oh, I have 90% of these things at home anyway. It's a lot of spices, right? There's a lot of common ingredients, so it's not complicated. And I want to go back to what you said about complicated Ayurveda cookbooks. You know, when I first got into Ayurveda, that was probably in 2004 or 5. When I did a detox, I bought this first Ayurvedic cookbook, and I loved that book. It's so used, you know. But you're right, it took me a long time to really figure out, what does this Vata Pitta Kapha thing mean? And is this good for me? Is it not good for me? I don't know, you know, this is really confusing. And I still like that book very much, but it was more complicated than what you've been presenting. So it's super helpful.
And yeah, people are busy, so I don't want them to have to spend a bunch of extra time figuring it out.
Totally.
I want them to just be able to cook the food.
And then, you know, recently I was in Germany. That was 6 months ago. That's where I'm from. And then I usually go there for, I don't know, 4 months out of the year. Anyway, I'm thinking to myself, hey, I'm just going to see what the German market is like for Ayurvedic cookbooks. Oh my God, I had a disastrous time finding a cookbook that was any good. So I ordered a couple, and it was like the layout was not so good. There was no pictures. It wasn't inspiring, you know. And I think I saw that you are going to have it translated into German as well. I think I saw that on Amazon.
It's already out. Yeah, it came out in the springtime.
Oh, cool. I'm so excited. I'm excited to see. Yeah, that's awesome. So hey,
it's beautiful. They did a great job.
Let's go on to your second cookbook, though, because your second cookbook is called Everyday Ayurveda Cooking for a Calm, Clear Mind, 100 Simple Sattvic Recipes, it says here. And first thing you have to explain to us, what does sattvic mean? And then the second thing I want to know is, why in the world did you focus on sattva?
Yeah. You know, the same reason I wrote a cookbook. It's the reason I wrote a book about, sattva is a word that is we're talking about the mind, which in all of the Vedic traditions, like yoga as well as Ayurveda, where we have this conversation going about this thing called the mind, which is a very active system that involves all of our mental processing, things like doubting, feeling, thinking, comprehending, like making sense of the big picture, and discerning is an important one, making choices. So it's the system called the mind that does that. And, you know, so back to the guy who needs to eat more kale, you know, I'm sitting there with this client, and, you know, after I'd seen somebody a couple times, more than half the time, it would come down to some sort of mental processing that was driving the imbalance. So the guy would say, yeah, you gave me that great recipe, and I was doing the kale thing, and I was feeling better. And then, I don't know, I just stopped, you know? And I think it's just such a common story. You're feeling better, you're doing it good, and then you kind of fall off the wagon. So I was like, what is this about? You know, there's a lot of challenges that people are facing when it comes to behavioral changes. And halfway through the first book, I realized, oh my God, I have to write another book, because I keep seeing these people over and over again. I'm seeing that humans in general have these mental processes that are making it hard to change their behavior, to change their diet, to change their lifestyle. So sattva is, again, a word from the classical texts of Ayurveda, and it's describing the natural, undisturbed state of the mind, where this mental system is, it's like right when you get, your car gets a tune-up and you drive it out of there, right? And there's no lurching, there's no weird sounds, nothing's sticking, everything's very clear. And you can see through all the windows, everything's clear. So the mind in its natural state is clear like that. So we look out at the world and we're seeing things as they actually are, which if you're seeing things as they actually are and you're eating more kale and it's making you feel better, then when you're seeing your kitchen, you're thinking, what am I going to eat? You're going to eat kale because it's obvious to you that that's working, right? But then we don't. Then we do this other thing, right? So the mental process is pulled upon by these energies in the universe that pull upon everything. And it can make us very restless and kind of hypermobile and crazy. It can also, on the other hand, make us very slow and dense and heavy and a little depressed. So it's like those are the two poles that the mind moves between. And they're the natural energies of matter and of movement in our cosmos. So Rajas is the energy of like kinetic movement. Mm-hmm. So Sattva is like when you wake up in the morning and everything is just like potential. You know, you haven't done anything yet. You're not moving yet. You're just waking up and like everything's very quiet and still in the whole universe. You know, and there's this real feeling that like, wow, anything can happen. Right? And there's a clarity. Nothing's disturbed us yet. Right? And then it starts coming. We start thinking, and then we get up and we start moving around the house. You know, the flowers are opening, the birds are tweeting, the sun is rising, the whole world is starting to move. So this is that Rajas is the energy of movement, of kinetic activity, which is a natural and wonderful thing. If we didn't have it, we'd kind of just sit there in a blissful state, which would be great for us, but it wouldn't be great for the human nation, you know, people moving about the world and being active creatures. So we kind of have to, that's what the Bhagavad Gita is about. It's a great old text from India about how we have to be active creatures in this world. So we're moving about, and then as the day is going on, you know, everybody starts to slow down and get tired. We fight it sometimes, which is a cause of disease, but we end up getting slower and heavier and just like a little denser as the evening comes on. The flowers close up, the birds get in their little beds, and everything goes into sleep mode. And there's that sense of the stopping of movement, and that's called tamas. And those energies those are the words that we use, and those are the concepts we use in Ayurveda to discuss what's happening in the mind. Is a person being pulled in the direction of kinetic energy, or is a person being pulled in the direction of sort of dead, slow energy? So I divided the book into recipes that increase sattva, that just kind of like will help keep us in a pure state of mind. And then there's recipes to sort of take it down a notch when we're crazy, and recipes to bring it up when we're amotivated, kind of slow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the reason I did all that was because I see it as such a big player right now in people's health. Yeah. That whole story that's going on with those three energies. And it's the mind that drives the decision making. And we want to make the right decisions, you know, and for our health, it's a very important part of being self-reliant in that one's health regimen. So keeping clarity in the mind is going to make everything that much smoother and easier.
So agreed. There is so much power in food and how it affects our mind. And I want to recount a story real quick. Actually, a couple stories. I'm reading this book called The Healing right now by Saida Hafiz. And she recounts the story of how she cleared her childhood trauma by changing the way she eats. And one of the things that she's saying is when she stopped eating sugar, she stopped suppressing everything from the past. And she welcomed that because she was able to move through that, right? So she let go of that. She was using food for the way she was treating her mind, and she didn't even know it. That's one, just to illustrate what you're saying, how the power of food, the power that food has on our mental capacity and where our mind's going.
Yeah.
And the other example that I wanted to bring is, I go to Germany, as I said, a couple times a year, and there's a certain German diet that everybody eats. There's lots of meat, there's lots of potatoes, and wherever you go, you find that there's soft pretzels everywhere, there's beer everywhere. It's so easy to come by. And for the last 20 years, I would go to Germany for a month out of the year, and I would be just like, you know what? I'm not going to control everything here. This is pathetic. I'm just going to go with the flow. And I was eating what was around. And now that I'm going there for an extended period of time, I've noticed that when I stay there for 2 months, like the first month, it's okay. Like my mind is not too affected. But the second month around, I get so dull and I get so heavy. And I get so sluggish, and I don't see clearly at all anymore. And I just get like, okay, life's great, but I don't really have a spark. Yeah. So I decided to sprout, because I was like, I got to find an antidote to this. This is like pathetic, I don't want this. So there's two things I did. I cut down the amount of meat I was eating, and I increased the amount of sprouts I was eating. And it was remarkable, the difference in the way my mind was showing up, in the way I was present, in the way I was alive and more tapped into what I wanted to do next. It was really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. What kind of sprouts did you eat?
Just alfalfa sprouts and red clover sprouts, just simple, nothing even particular. It's so easy to grow too. Yeah. Does something do you have a story like that you can share with us that like comes up for you, where it was like really potent?
That's a great story. It happens to me around the holidays. I get very excited about holiday treats, and I will eat like too much, like baked goods, cookies, and that kind of thing. I'll usually go through a couple day period where I just go like hog wild, as they say, and just eat all that stuff. And it's funny because I get depressed. So it's easy to imagine that I would feel like you said, like dull and kind of, heavy, like with a big like gut sticking out, and kind of like, I just want to sleep. I don't really want to exercise or anything. But for me, it goes beyond that. Even it starts with that, but then I end up in this real place of despondency, where it was interesting to me that you said when your mind was clear, you were able to think about what you wanted to do next. So you have that ability to see the bigger picture about your movements in this world, like a sort of a dharma. And when my body is not in balance, I get totally disconnected from that. And I just feel like, what's the point? Like, why are we here? And I go into this whole existential dilemma. And it's funny because it all starts with enjoying like baked goods and like, playing Christmas carols.
So relate. Yeah, totally. I could totally relate to that one.
And it's like, yeah, Christmas time. And then it's like, oh, the world, by the new year, I'm just like, what are we here for? This whole thing is awful. And it's just fully rooted in the body, because I've watched that story so many times that now I know I don't have to go into this feeling of despondency and flesh out all these existential questions. It's actually just clear up the diet, just like burn a little toxicity out of the gut and get back on track. And then it's like, it's a new day, and I can like see the world around me and my place in it clearly again.
Yeah. Let's go back to this idea of sattva. Without saying specific recipes, what does it mean? What are some kind of sattvic foods that we can ingest to create that harmony and balance in our minds?
The main thing about the sattvic food is it has the highest amount of prana possible. So prana being like life force. So when we eat foods that are like heavily processed or like really old, or foods that are not local, have traveled a long way or are picked out of season, those kind of foods don't have a lot of mojo, as I like to say. So when you eat them,
no mojo food.
no mojo. So when you eat it, your body's like spending energy to break it down, but it's not actually being nourished by it. It's not actually getting nutrition and energy from the food. So you end up, it's again that feeling of kind of rowing your boat backwards in the stream, and your body's like being taxed. So when we bring in the full prana food, that's like, the less processed a food is, the closer it is to its natural state, generally the more prana it has. The closer it is to the soil from which it came, more prana. The whole energy around the growing of the food and the preparation of the food and the consumption of the food. So it comes back to this movement that's kind of happening anyway, of people looking for local foods and local farmers, and people who are eating meat are doing things like meat shares, where where the animals come from and how it was treated and butchered. And then in your own preparation of the food, there's also the ability to increase sattva, as I say, which is to increase the sort of pure and beautiful aspects of being in this body. So food is like celebration of the 5 elements. It's a celebration of the natural world and our place in it. I think that is the most important thing, because when we approach the diet in that way, the food then becomes like a ceremony where with nature, where we begin to feel connected to the world around us. And according to all the Vedic sciences and arts, the whole reason that humans suffer, any philosopher will tell you, the reason humans suffer is because we begin to believe ourselves separate from everything around us. Like me at New Year's time. I started to get I'm sad, Mm-hmm. So it's really about the where we get our food, how it was grown, how we prepare it. And it's whole foods. Little bit of dairy is fine, as long as preferably not a commercial dairy, but a more local dairy. Legumes, the vegetarian diet. Eggs are not considered sattvic in the more serious sets, because they are sort of an animal food. They're also very hard to digest. They're a little bit on the heavy and sticky side. And fresh fruits and vegetables. Yeah. So it's like, it's like what Whole Foods says on the front of the store now. It's like, eat more fruits and vegetables. Michael Pollan, I think, says, eat more plants. It's like, oh, okay. We're all saying the same thing.
We are totally different words, right? I like, because you're bringing up Michael Pollan. I loved in one of his books, he just said like what to eat, like this whole dilemma around what to eat. And you open up the book, and the first thing on one page, all he says, eat food, period. Oh,
mostly vegetables.
Like, eat food, period. Mostly vegetables, period. Like, that's it.
I know.
It's so profound, right?
Yeah. Well, this is the question that I think where a lot of us are asking culturally right now is what is food actually? Yeah. Of all the things we could consume that are being offered to us in the marketplace, what of those things is actually going to improve my quality of health?
Yeah.
There's a lot of food in quote, that's not beneficial. It's just taxing the body. Yeah, it's making us sick, making us sad.
Yeah, and always being suspicious of anything that's in a box. that's what anything in a box or in a can I'm suspicious of. So I read the ingredient labels. I'm like, it's this food.
Yeah.
Food.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the concerns that so many people have is the amount of time they spend in the kitchen, isn't it? Like, you want to make it simple and quick. Mm-hmm. How much time do you spend in the kitchen?
Not a ton, honestly. Most of the recipes that like everything that's in that book, like I actually eat that. That is my diet. You know, that's how I came up with it. And most of it takes less than a half hour to prepare. More like 20 minutes. I would say honestly, like my workflow, like a lot of my work is at home now on the computer. I'll take a break. And like for me to prepare it, eat it, chill out a bit, clean up a bit is an hour, which I think is totally reasonable. It's not like I trashed my kitchen and spent an hour cleaning that either. Like a lot of my MO there is to reduce the number of dishes I'm making. So a lot of my, yeah, I'm like, if there's 3 pots or pans involved, I'm out. Like, forget it. I don't want to watch it. So a lot of my recipes are also in that way, like they're happening like in just one or 2 pots and pans. Yeah. And anytime I see that big list of ingredients, I'm out. Forget it. I'm just not going to do it. I'm a total outlaw when it comes to following recipes. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would say I spend about 20 minutes or 25 minutes preparing a meal.
Yeah, that's super stellar. Totally reasonable, right?
Yeah, twice a day I do it.
You know, so the other thing I'm curious about is, what do you tell someone who has some food addiction? I'm talking about food addiction, meaning like spicy food or sugary food, or excessively craving salty food. What's your go-to advice for them or insight?
You know, I talk a lot about how when the body is out of balance, that's where these doshas, which people might have heard about, they are that which is at fault in the body. There are these energy compounds in the body that cause the problems. And when one of those compounds is getting busy, or I'd say like having a party in your body, you know, you can manage it, and they can knock on your door and you say, hey, like, no party tonight. But over time, if you, let's use the example of spicy food, if you're taking the spicy foods that increase heat in the body, like having nachos and burritos with a margarita, alcohol also, it has the fire element predominant, you know, all that stuff you're coming in. So then the fire boys come and want to have a party. And there's more of them. You can't manage it. So they come in, they take you over your house, right? And they start having a fiery party. So it's like, that's what's happening in when a person has a really strong craving for too much of something that's not increasing their quality of health. It's coming from the place of the imbalance. So it's like that fire imbalance is causing that craving. Whereas the texts describe a situation when we bring the fire boys back into balance, we kind of get it under control by reducing the amount of spicy food. Although we crave it, although those boys are in there like, feed us, we kind of, you know, we override that in order to do something, eat more kale, you know, like Kate says. And we start to feel better, and we start to want the kale. So the little guys are like, feed us, feed us. They get like quieter. Yeah. And the desire for the foods that balance us gets larger. And that's a process that people can observe. You know, they don't have to like take our word for it. They can completely be a mad scientist and make the change. And that's why I describe sort of all the qualities that balance each other in my book. So you're talking about salt. What is that? Where do you go to balance it? You know, so then you can try overriding the party that's going on and trying the other thing a couple times. And then as it begins to change the body, the cravings begin to change. And it just takes a little bit of time. And once you start to feel better, you don't want that stuff as much anymore. And it's important to note that you can also still have it. It's not like it needs to go away forever, you know, but you have to kind of pull away and get back into a state of balance where that craving for the spice or the salt or whatever doesn't have such a compelling voice. in your head.
Yeah, I like that analogy of the party going on with the,
Yeah.
what do you call it? The fire, what do you call those people? The fire.
The fire boys.
The fire boys. I love that. So you're having a party in this one room and you're like, oh God, it's too loud in here. This is terrible. I'm going to close the door and I'm going to go into this other room. And the party's still going on over there. But you're in this other room. You're like, I'm not participating because I am much more comfortable over here. That sounds like a good plan. Actually, so it sounds like there for a minute, we have to make a choice to not engage in the party. And then the party will get quieter anyway, and then it's no big deal anymore. But for a minute, we have to get that courage up or whatever.
Yeah. That's what, working with a coach of some sort can be really helpful. If somebody can't manage it, can't get over that hump, or isn't sure what the action is that's going to balance what they're experiencing.
Totally.
So like, it's like, what do I do? If someone tells me what to do, then you just do it.
Yeah.
Right? The reason I wrote the second book is because why don't people just do it?
Uh-huh.
They know what it is, but they still don't do it. What's going on there? And that's the mental process.
Yeah.
And what you describe of sort of needing to make that choice, that first choice that changes the trajectory of the craving, that's the hard one. And sattva is required. So when we make that choice, we come from like our true nature, the part of the organism that knows what's the best thing to do right now. Yeah. So we need to like get on our center and be in that place of truth and clarity and willing to sort of accept things as they are and see it for real. Like to see, like, I'm sure you've seen people with addictions who are like, I'm not addicted to that. I hear it with coffee. Oh, I'm not. No, I need the coffee just to get going, So it's like there needs to also be a willingness to see, oh man, the coffee's giving me the acid stomach. Bummer. That's, it's kind of obvious now. I need to reduce the coffee.
Yeah.
And then you get in your strong place and make the move.
Yeah, and it is like what you're saying about the coach. It feels so helpful because the coach or a supportive group or a community is really reminding us constantly, hey, this is your higher self. This is your essence here. And this is where you want to go, right? Is that still true? Oh yeah, totally. I want to be there. I want to be in this balanced place. Like, okay, well, we're reminding you, this is what's causing you to be pulled away from your center. And this is what can pull you towards the center, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So the last question I have for you, Kate, is what lights you up about Ayurveda? What lights you up to continue on this path? What's like the core thing for you personally?
It would be easy to say that I feel better. like my gut is better. I had a messed up gut when I started 20 years ago. And now I can eat what I want, which is a great feeling. It's a great feeling. I'd say it took me 10 years of very, of slow and steady practice to rehab. I was pretty messed up. So to get to this place, I'm very grateful for that. But the thing that keeps me going and keeps me studying is actually that the study of the Vedic sciences changes my understanding of the nature of reality. So I'm a bit of a philosopher in that way. And I just find that the deeper I go into this paradigm or this way of viewing like the human body and nature and our place in it, there's a yoga there that I find very exciting, very fulfilling. I feel it's a spiritual practice, and it keeps me going. It's not like I have to keep going to it, like it's keeping me going. It's a spiritual practice that links me to like what I'm here to do.
Yeah.
So that is what I love about it.
That's super cool. Super cool.
Yeah. I'm very lucky.
I like it that it keeps you going, that you don't have to step towards it, but actually it steps towards you. It has your back, it sounds like. Totally just has your back. Hey, Kate, got your back. Come on, now next step. Oh, come on, Kate.
Yeah.
Moving on. Awesome. Yeah. Any parting words that you would like to share for with us, for us?
I do think this is a funny thing to say, but I think that my books make great Christmas presents. So people who are listening now should not forget 2 months from now when you're like, what do we get that person? Because everybody gifts my book to someone they love, and it just goes over really great. So I'm getting the holiday spirit here. So yeah.
Great idea. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Kate, and really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you.